Hello guys, so doing something a bit different today. This is my first tier list video in quite a while. So I was thinking maybe I will do a list on the Beatles albums, as I have not done one of these in a long time. I'm gonna get into presentation mode just so that it's better perhaps, and we'll go from here. So this is kind of to coincide with the fact that Revolver, one of these albums, is actually getting a 50th anniversary. No. They're getting a special edition release. The last four Beatles special editions have all been 50th anniversary editions. Well, let's get into it. So first we have the White Album. So the White Album, I'm gonna put in the A tier. So about the White Album, I love this album so much. I would love to put it in S tier. It's the only double album on behalf of the Beatles, and it's technically not even called the White Album. It's in reality a self-titled album that's simply the Beatles. So I mean, why does this go in A tier? The main issue is just that I fucking love so many of the songs. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Dear Prudence, Back to the USSR, Helter Skelter. Like some of them are just some of the best Beatles tracks. But the problem is this album also has a lot of the worst Beatles songs, such as Revolution 9, Wild Honey Pie. I could maybe name one or two more. Just can't right now. Alright, next is Yellow Submarine. This is gonna go into D tier. No, F. This is gonna go into the F. No, D. D. So the reason I'm putting this one in the D tier is because the latter half of the album is just orchestrations on behalf of George Martin, which were done for the film Yellow Submarine. And this album actually has a few new songs. Some of which were outtakes from Sergeant Pepper. We'll get to that later. And I mean, which are It's Only a Northern Song and It's All Too Much, which were George songs. You also have All You Need Is Love and then Yellow Submarine, which both appeared on previous albums before that. But there's also another new song called Hey Bulldog, and I feel like that song is like the biggest saving grace. Oh yeah, and it also has Paul's All Together Now. Alright, Let It Be. This just got a 50th anniversary reissue last year. I'm gonna put it in the A tier. There's so much to love about this album, which was originally called Get Back. I mean, if you watch the Get Back documentary, you could see the craziness behind the scenes making this album, which became Let It Be after Phil Spector took over production. I mean, it's a really great album. I mean, yeah, it does have some bad songs like Dig It. Actually, no, like Dig It and Maggie May. But I mean, you have some of the best Beatles songs on there, such as Let It Be, the title track, Get Back, Long and Winding Road. I've got you got a lot of great tracks. So that's why I put in A. Alright, next is Abbey Road, and this is gonna go into the S tier. I fucking love this album. Like, there's only really one weak track, which is Her Majesty. All the other tracks are awesome. My favorites are easily Something. Yeah, Something. You Never Give Me Your Money. The End. Like, there's just so much greatness off of this album. Also, of course, Here Comes the Sun. Alright, Please Please Me. This was their debut album. This is gonna go into the B tier. Now, why the B tier? It's just because there's also, I mean C tier, I'm sorry. The main issue I just have with this album is there's a lot of just very slow tracks. But I mean there's some amazing tracks like obviously Twist and Shout. A lot of covers on the album. Like half the album is covers. Like you got Twist and Shout. I Saw Her Standing There. Boys, which is a Ringo sung song. few songs just don't do it for me. Like A Taste of Honey just doesn't do it for me. And and yeah. All right, with the Beatles next up, I'd say also C tier. I could argue maybe slightly better, but I feel like maybe it could be sort of a tie between both these albums. I mean, there's no doubt with the Beatles has some really great songs. All My Loving from Paul. You have the cover of Please Mr. Postman and Money, both covers there. Also George's Roll Over Beethoven cover of Chuck Berry. You also have George's first composition as a songwriter, Don't Bother Me. I mean, you have some other fun tunes like It Won't Be Long. Yeah, just had to do that right there because it's like It Won't Be Long, yeah, yeah. Like it's like that. It's a very fun opener. All right, next up is A Hard Day's Night, which this is a hard one. No pun intended, but this is a hard one. I'm gonna say C tier as well, just because I mean there's some songs that definitely drag it. The title track is amazing. Tell Me Why is up there. Even I'm Happy with to Dance with You, which is another George song, although it was written by John and Paul. I mean, you also have some other great tunes, such as obviously Can't Buy Me Love. It's just that there's some tunes that just aren't really that great in a way. Like some are just throwaways. I kind of have to say that. All right. Beatles for Sale, also a C tier. The main issue I just happen to have is there are some throwaway songs on here, but it's still a good album. I mean, 8 Days a Week is probably the best song. Some songs at the end are kind of throwaways, but I mean, the first two tracks are amazing. You got you got No Reply and I'm a Loser. Plus, you later got Rock and Roll Music, which another Chuck Berry cover, this time sung by John. It's easily I mean, Rock and Roll Music is probably up there with 8 Days a Week as best song. Oh yeah, and also Kansas City Hey 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 cover of which is a medley of Little Richard. So yeah, there's definitely some great tracks off of these. All right, the next album is I would say all right. So the next album is Help. Help is a bit harder to do, but I feel like C tier also would fall in. I mean, the title track, I feel like it's gotten kind of old just listening to it so much, but there's some other great tracks. The Night Before, George has another pen track with I Need You. Although that one isn't really that great, if I'm going to be honest. Paul's Another Girl is really good though. I mean, of course you have Yesterday and I actually love the final track, Dizzy Miss Lizzy, which is a cover of a which is another cover song of I think the guy who did it was named Larry Williams. I think the original was from Larry Williams. I might be correct. Like they did a single for it was originally I mean the Dizzy Miss Lizzy cover was released as a single to celebrate like his birthday, which also had Bad Boy on I think the B side. Or it might have been the other way. All right, Rubber Soul, I would say B tier. Although I could argue it just barely got above C tier. So the reason I put Rubber Soul in B tier is because there's just so much like new experimental material. Like you got Norwegian Wood with the sitar from George after and I mean you also got Drive My Car, which is a really great tune. I mean there's so many other great songs on here. George has Think for Yourself. I mean I'm Looking Through You. Uh if George's if I Needed Someone is a really good one as well. The best is probably In My Life. Although there are some tracks that and I mean, The Word is also really good. I mean, I could be saying every song is really good, except for Run for Your Life. I feel like Run for Your Life is what drags this down because I really don't like that song. Okay. Next album is Revolver. As I mentioned, this is getting a special edition release this in a few months. So Revolver, I would say B tier for this one as well. Maybe in a tie with Rubber Soul. I actually really like this album a lot too. I mean, some have said it's up there with Sergeant Pepper, which might be a little bit of a stretch. But I really enjoy this track, this album. George shines out with Taxman to start it. Eleanor Rigby is actually a pretty cool track. Like I find it very cool how you now got a lot of experimenting and stuff that can't be played on stage. The Beatles themselves never played any track from Revolver on stage because they couldn't play any of them on stage in reality. So yeah, you got I mean you also got another sitar track from George. And George also has I Want to Tell You. Almost every track is really good. I love Paul's Here, There, and Everywhere for No One. Obviously, Yellow Submarine with Ringo, although that was written by John. Good Day Sunshine. Every track is really good. The weakest on the album is probably either Dr. Robert or I'm Only Sleeping, but I don't know. All right. And this is probably the most popular Beatles album, but I am going to be putting it in the A tier instead of the S tier because I'll spoiler alert, Abbey Road is my favorite Beatles album, and it is Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So Sergeant Pepper is one of the best Beatles albums by for sure. It's among one of them. I mean, you got the opening, two songs, Lucy in the Sky, Getting Better, Fixing a Hole. She's Leaving Home is actually a pretty underrated track. You got Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, Within You Without You. When I'm 64, I'm kind of naming every track off of the album, but the weakest on the album is probably Lovely Rita, but even then, that song isn't really even that bad, but it's much weaker than the rest of the superior tracks. I even love Good Morning, even though that song is probably the hardest song to play on drums. I, I've I really suck at trying to play Good Morning, especially the ending whenever I play on my drums. Okay, and last but not least, Magical Mystery Tour, which was not released as a studio album. This was not released as a studio album in the UK, but it was in America. And I'm putting in the A tier because it's the shortest. It's actually the shortest Beatles album if you count it. But there's so many iconic tracks. The title track, Fool on the Hill is up there. I Am the Walrus, Hello Goodbye, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, and then of course All You Need Is Love ending it. This was actually a bit of a hard tier list to do, and I'm just gonna say it right now. None of these albums are bad except for maybe Yellow Submarine. Like all of these albums have amazing tunes. So if you get pissed off saying, "Hey, why is this album in C tier?" or "Why is Sergeant Pepper not in S tier? It's the best album of all time." Well, I'll tell you right now that I just personally have grown with I've grown up with Abbey Road the most, and that's probably why Abbey Road is my favorite album, just because I've grown up with it the most. That album and the White Album were probably the ones that I grew up with the most. The last of Beatles, I actually never bought the Yellow Submarine album. The last Beatles album that I had that we had bought, we had tried to buy all 13 albums. The last one that we had bought when I was a kid was Hard Day's Night and Help. Those were the last two. Although I bought this one. I bought Hard Day's Night last, but listened to it before Help. Beatles for Sale. I had with the Beatles. Originally I had bought the American version, which was Meet the Beatles. But yeah, Please Please Me. A lot of the earlier stuff we bought a lot later. But like these albums up here in S and A, plus I believe Rubber Soul, we bought were like the first Beatles albums we had bought. Although Let It Be might have been later. but I think Rubber Soul. But yeah, you know what? I don't know. I mean, I don't know when we bought all the Beatles albums, if I'm gonna be honest, but I do know for sure that Abbey Road and the White Album were the two albums from the Beatles that I grew up with the most. And I mean, and that's why they got so high up. And I mean, this is kind of on a scale that's meant to be balanced. So, what I'm trying to say is that like when I did the George Harrison tier list, I could argue that some of these albums, even though I'd say All Things Must Pass is probably an S or A tier, but I mean you got stuff like Living in the Material World, which I probably would say would be in the B tier instead of I think I put in like A or something like that. And I mean 33 and a third probably in the B is well actually A, I'm not sure. I mean it's meant to be proportional and to be scaled from best to worst. I did not put any albums in F because, as I said, none of the albums except for Yellow Submarine, which I didn't. I got a little close to putting that one in F, but hey, Bulldog saved it. I mean, it's complicated, and I mean, and yeah. So, thank you guys for watching. I'd like to thank one last time for getting us to 1,400 subscribers. My goal is to hit 1,500 by the end of the year. So, yeah, make sure you guys subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, share my channel with others. You could become a sponsor for as little as just $1 a month, or excuse me, or even donate. You can also even find me on other social media platforms in the description. See you guys in the next video or live stream, man. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.